Okay, so going for another walk. Have a bit of a chat. Before we get into that, we need to cross over the railway line. So take a look both ways. And we're clear to cross. Okay, we've come to a different location today. It's on the other side of the gate where I normally turn round, and it's partly marshland and it's also the bird sanctuary. So plenty of nice countryside to look at. So as you can see, just down the way there is the salt marshes, where you get all the wading birds. It's also a nesting and breeding ground. And if we walk this way onto the marsh, before we do, take a look at the stream. Lovely, clear, comes straight down from the mountains. Okay, so the title of this video is Living with Cidp. As some of you probably know, I do have a disability, and it's called chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, which is quite a mouthful. So as we're walking around today, I'm just going to talk briefly about it. Basically, about 15 years ago, I woke up one morning and I thought I'd laid funny on my shoulder, as you sometimes do. I thought nothing of it, left it for a couple of days, and it started spreading across my back and into the other shoulder. So I went to see my doctor, and he thought I might have had a pinched or trapped nerve. He wasn't too concerned. So he referred me to the hospital, but on a outpatient's non-emergency appointment, which at the time I was fine with. I didn't really have that much of a concern. And then 4 days later, my parents came round to my house and they found that I was unable to use either arm. I couldn't feed, myself. I couldn't lift anything. I couldn't even turn on tap to get a glass of water. So I ended up at the hospital, and initially they had no idea what was going on. And over the course of the next week or so, I became more and more paralysed until I was paralysed from the neck down. I was actually quite lucky because this was only 18 months after I'd left the army, so I was still physically fit. Otherwise I would have probably ended up on a respirator. But luckily, because I had more lung capacity than normal, I was able to get away with not having to be put on a respirator. So, a couple of weeks go by, and the doctors are looking at different conditions that might have caused it. For a while they thought it might have been motor neuron disease because of the rapid onset and because it started in my shoulders. But after a few tests, MRIs, EKGs, EMGs, you name it, they did it. Turns out that I had Guillain-Barré syndrome. And basically what that is your own immune system attacks your nervous system. If you think about your nerves as wires, they have a coating on the outside called the myelin sheath, which is roughly the same as the plastic coating on electrical wires, and it does exactly the same job. Because this was damaged, the signals from my brain to different parts of my body were actually short-circuiting out of the nerve and just dissipating into the muscle, which is why I was paralysed. And so they were able to treat it using what's called immunoglobulin therapy, which is basically they take a few cells out of blood donations, specific they're called antigens, and they make up an infusion using tens of thousands of blood donations, because they are only taking a small number of cells from each one. And I was given that, and after 5 days I was almost fully recovered. So I eventually went home thinking I got away with it, and a month later the symptoms started to reoccur. Now normally with Guillain-Barré you have one episode and then a long recovery period. It doesn't normally reoccur, but they gave me the same treatment again, same thing. Within a week I was back on my feet, and this kept happening again and again. The third or fourth time it reoccurred, they upgraded it to Cidp, which is the basically it's reoccurring Guillain-Barré. The only problem is that every time it reoccurs, if your body's not had enough time in between to recover, then the nerve damage can become permanent. And over the space of 15 years, I've had 35 hospital admissions for treatment. So that's basically about 35 reoccurrences. And each time there's been slightly more damage to my nerves. And this has led to me being permanently disabled. I have problems with my motor functions in my leg, both legs, I'm losing flexor function in my ankles. I have pain in my upper extremities. I have pain in my torso, headaches. It's affected my eyesight. So basically, because it's attacking the nervous system, it can actually affect any part of your body. And I started using a walking stick about 12 years ago when I was having trouble walking, and that helped for a while, but with each reoccurrence the damage was getting worse, and I ended up going on to using an elbow crutch, which allowed me to walk 20 to 30 meters with little trouble, but I was having to take a lot of breaks. Now, I used the elbow crutch for about 7 or 8 years, and I finally got assessed by the physiotherapist, and I'm now walking with a full leg brace on my left leg and an ankle brace on each ankle. These are now the permanent solution to my problems, although they're not a full solution. I still get a lot of pain. I still have trouble walking long distances, but at least now I can walk a mile if I make sure that I walk at a pace that's right for me. I can walk about a mile, which is a vast improvement over even when I was using the elbow crutch. I'm never going to fully recover. My last appointment with my neurologist, he said that he was convinced the CIDP was in remission. But with everything else with this condition, it's always good news and bad news. So good news is it's in remission. Bad news is that means that all the difficulties that I have now are likely to be permanent, because they're not being caused directly by the CIDP, because that's in remission. So it's likely that it's more to do with nerve damage that's accumulated over the years, and that's more likely to be permanent. But the thing with the disability is you can't concentrate on what you can't do, because you're just setting yourself up for failure. You've got to concentrate on what you can do and do it as often as you can. That's the reason I got into YouTube, because I wanted something that was creative and would take up some of my spare time. One of the other problems that I face with the condition is what's called aphasia. And basically what that is a difficulty the brain has with communicating with your speech and your motor functions. So basically I can formulate speech in my brain, but I can't always get it to come out of my mouth, or what comes out of my mouth isn't what I'm thinking. Also, sometimes if I go to pick something up, my hand won't stop and my fingers won't grasp it, and I'll just end up knocking over cups of tea or whatever I'm reaching for. which can be quite annoying. But with regards to the aphasia, doing videos on YouTube has helped me an awful lot. Before, I used to stutter and stammer almost on every single word, and I'd have to shoot 3 or 4 or 5 takes just to get a simple sentence out. So in my earlier videos, you'll see a lot of jump cuts all over the place. And this was because I was having to pick out single words in order to make a sentence. I'm now having to do less retakes, reshoots and everything, because the practice has given me back some of that muscle memory when it comes to speaking. But I sometimes do slur my speech as well, which is another symptom of the CIDP. But as I was saying, you've got to do what you can do and not worry about what you can't. And it's actually helped a lot with my confidence as well. But as far as the physical elements go, it's not a case of building up muscle as you would after a physical injury, because it's the nerves. It doesn't matter how big or small your muscles are, they just won't work because they're not getting the messages. A lot of the nerve damage that I've suffered, because it's permanent, there is a chance that I can reroute the messages and operate my body that way. But it's difficult to explain, but you don't want to get your hopes up too much, because a lot of it is out of your control. I mean, the walking helps, but it's not a complete answer. So you've got to avoid setting yourself up for failure. As you can see, there's the marsh. I've flown over this with my drone a couple of times. You can see a video on that on the channel. It's a lovely sunny day today. But getting back to what I was saying, is the physical difficulties that I have, there isn't a lot I can do about it because of the nerve damage. If any of you are diabetic, you'll know all about neuropathy. I've got about 50% feeling in my hands and my fingers. I also suffer from tremors, which makes doing anything intricate quite difficult. But these are all things that you can live with. You might not necessarily be able to do anything about them, but you can live with them. It's about adjusting your expectations a lot of the time. I used to be in the army, I used to run a lot. I can't run now. That's just something I've got to live with and face up to. But I can walk, and now that I've got the leg and ankle braces, I can walk a lot further, and it's a lot less difficult, so I can concentrate on that. Unfortunately, I do have other medical conditions that aren't the best to have alongside the CIDP. I have heart problems. I damaged my spine quite severely when I was in the army. I broke it in 2 places, crushed 2 vertebrae, and that combined with the CIDP is what has caused a lot of the physical difficulties. There's also other stuff like the aphasia and incontinence, but again, they're just things that you learn to deal with, you learn to live with them, and you just got to get on. It's not always easy. It can be quite difficult psychologically. I mean, I have days where it's very hard to even get out of bed because I'm physically tired, I'm emotionally tired. And I've never been a slow person. That's one of the most difficult things, is I've had to slow down. And I've always been someone who's on the go, who's doing something. Hello? And so that's probably been one of the hardest things to get used to. One of the other things that affects me is CIDP is an invisible condition. If it wasn't for my walking stick or elbow crutch, you probably wouldn't think there was anything wrong with me at all until you get to know me. Now with the leg braces, because they're under my jeans or under my trousers, they're out of sight, so it appears that I can walk fine. What people don't see is the discomfort, the pain, the spasming of the muscles, and since I changed over to the splints, I've had a lot of people saying, "Oh, you must be getting better," when in fact I'm not. And that can be quite annoying and frustrating, because you don't want to keep saying to people, "Oh no, I'm not getting better. This is just, you know, the way I'm coping with it at the minute means that I'm walking better, I'm walking further." But what they don't see is when I've done that walk and I've got home and I've sat down, I might sleep for 2-3 hours, or I don't sleep at night because after a couple of hours of sleep I'll wake up feeling uncomfortable, in pain. So they don't see the real impact. Unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about that. You can keep explaining it day after day, and some people won't get it, some people will. For instance, my parents know as soon as I say something to them, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, because of any slight slurring in my speech, they can pick up on. So even when they ask me how I am and I say I'm fine, they know I'm not. Sometimes I think it'd be easier if I was in a wheelchair, which the doctors did say about 10 years ago that I would be within about 2 years. So I'm doing well in that respect. But it's all part of having a disability. You've got to give and take, you know. You've got to understand that if you're out and about with somebody, they want to get somewhere quickly and you're holding them back, you know, it's going to cause frustration. But they've got to understand that, you know, you're not doing it on purpose. You're doing it because that's how your body is. I live on my own, and a lot of that is to do with the condition. I don't really want to saddle someone with my bad days, because my bad days turn into bad weeks, which turn into bad months. I'm probably between 45 and 60% of what I would regard as good health, and that's something that can be a real big strain, especially as I never know until I wake up in the morning, or whenever I wake up, how that day's going to go. Some days my legs will hurt the worst, sometimes my arms will hurt the worst, but there's no consistency to it. It can change during the course of a day, and it can change from day to day, and it's an awful lot to put on to someone else, especially with, you know, everything else day-to-day life. So I'm quite happy to be on my own. So you can see we've gone all the way around the outside there. If I was going to give any sort of advice to anybody about dealing with somebody with a disability, is one of the things I found is people tend to want to say, oh, you're looking well today, or you're looking better. But bear in mind that even the most severe disabilities, people have their good days and their bad days. And take a couple of minutes just to ask that person, how does your disability affect you? Don't assume just because they look well, they are well. And allow them the opportunity to offload a little bit on you. That can be one of the worst things about it, is not having an opportunity to say, you know, I fucking hate this. And you do tend to bottle a lot of things up. We're all going to get older. We're all going to get to a point where there's something about us that doesn't work properly. And it doesn't matter if you've got multiple symptoms, single symptoms. Doesn't matter if it's just asthma or diabetes. Take the time to understand people's conditions. So that's basically all about my condition. And as you can hear, probably, it does affect my breathing still. But Smoking probably doesn't help with that, but we'll keep that to ourselves. I hope you've enjoyed this walk. It's a beautiful area. We get bird watchers from all over the country come down here. You'll see them down on the beach there with their telescopes and all their fancy bird watching equipment. And we're back to where we started. We're due for a heat wave, so I don't know if I'll be venturing out too much, because that's something else that does affect me. I have problems regulating body heat, so when I get hot, I get really hot, and when I get cold, I get really cold. So I'll be probably sheltering in a dark room with a fan and a bottle of water for the next few days. And hopefully I'll be putting out some more videos next week. I've got a few reviews that I need to do. And we'll make our way back to the car. Try not to get hit by a train. Look both ways again. And cross over. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for listening to me waffle on. And hello.
Here, come here.
Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe. And I hope you all have a very pleasant, wonderful day like we're having here.